The NBA playoffs tip off today, and here is a full preview of the entire thing. Starting out with the number one seed in the Western Conference, Oklahoma City. They started the title defense season without their second best player, Jalen Williams, and won 24-1 in their first 25 games. Then they did get a little bit rocky, losing a few games, and lost the season series 4-1 to the Spurs. But even without SGA for a period of time, they were never not the West 1 seed. They won 64 games to grab their third straight number 1 seed behind 31.1 points and 6.6 assists per game from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. At the very worst, they'll be a conference finals team, and they for sure could win the NBA Finals. The Pistons came off a year where they won a playoff game for the first time since 2008. They started 2-2 but then won 13 straight games. And then in late March they lost Cade Cunningham to a collapsed lung, ending his MVP hopes due to ineligibility and that stupid 65-game rule. But Detroit went 8-3 before he returned and helped the Pistons finish with 60 wins for the first time in 20 years. He averaged 24-10 and was helped by big man Jalen Duren, whose 19.5 points per game and 10.5 rebounds per game earned him his first All-Star nod. I think their floor is a second round L, but they're just a year away, and the ceiling is most likely the conference finals. Mitch Johnson's first full year as a head coach, San Antonio won their first 5 games. Then Wemby had a little bit of a rough stretch individually, but it didn't last long. They then made a run in the NBA Cup before losing in the final to New York. Then they rattled off 5 wins in a row, including 2 against OKC, who they beat in the Cup semis. They then went a perfect 10-0 in February before another win over the Thunder. They got walloped by New York on the 1st of March before going 13-0 the rest of the month, finishing with 63 wins, their most since 2017, their last 61 season, and their first playoff season since 2019, behind 25 points, 11.5 rebounds, and 3 blocks in 65 games from Victor Wembanyama. I think honestly they could make the finals. I have doubts about whether they'd win it, but their floor is most likely a tough second round series. After losing Jason Tatum to a torn Achilles back in May, and losing Jrue Holiday and their entire front court to free agency, the Celtics, despite being 2 years removed from an NBA championship, looked like 2026 would be a gap year for them. And after starting 0-3, they began to lock in. They went 20-12 in the first couple of months of the season, and then on March 6th, they got Jason Tatum back against the Dallas Mavericks. They won by 20, and JT had 15, 12, and 7. He's been slowly improving, averaging 22, 10, and 5. Efficiency isn't all the way there, though. Although there have been a multitude of reasons for the Celtics' success, and Joe Mazzulla has been coaching them great this year, and Jaylen Brown has had a really strong year, averaging 29, 7, and 5. Now, I personally dislike the Celtics, but I have to admit that 56 wins in a gap year is impressive. 5 straight 51 seasons is also impressive, and I can't believe I'm giving this much credit to the Celtics, but 12 straight playoff seasons is also impressive. I think their floor is a tight second round L, but I also think that they're legitimately capable of winning the NBA Finals this year. Coming off a year where they took the defending champs to 7 games, Denver looked like a real contender. Despite losing Aaron Gordon for a while early in the season, the Nuggets started out pretty strong, winning 22 of the first 31 games. Then, in a loss to the Miami Heat, Nikola Jokic, the 3-time MVP, hyperextended his knee, putting him out for 16 games. Denver was able to stay afloat in his absence, going 10-6, and ended the regular season on a 12-game winning streak to finish with 54 wins, their 4th straight 50-win season, and their 8th straight playoff appearance. Nikola Jokic was just able to qualify for MVP with 27.7 points per game, 12.9 rebounds per game, and 10.7 assists per game, his 2nd straight year averaging a triple-double, and the first season of anyone leading the league in rebounds and assists. This dude really a 2K mod player, because this dude dropped 56, 16, and 15 in a game. Like, that's diabolical. Now, the floor is probably a second-round loss to San Antonio, and their ceiling is definitely a championship, because Nikola Jokic is unstoppable. Coming off of a conference finals appearance, the Knicks made the call to fire Tom Thibodeau and brought in Mike Brown as head coach. They started the season 13-7, but then they won 7 straight, including the NBA Cup final against the San Antonio Spurs. In mid-January, they then lost 4-0 to the Kings, Warriors, Suns, and Mavericks. None of them were close either. Neither was the game against the Nets the next day. They won by 54, the first of 8 consecutive wins, and they finished the season 53-29 for their third straight 50-win season and their fourth straight playoff season. Jalen Brunson was balling all year, averaging 26 points and 7 assists. He could win another clutch play of the year. New York's floor and ceiling are very low and very high because of how inconsistent they've been. They could either get knocked out round 1 by Atlanta or make another Eastern Conference Finals appearance. Coming off a disappointing ending to last season, the Lakers brought in DeAndre Ayton to fix the glaring hole that was the center position. They were very banged up through 14 games, but still went 10-4 early on. Then they were up and down, pretty rough and bumpy until March, when they started hitting their groove. They went 15-2 last month, with Luka Doncic dropping 28, 27, 27, 44, 35, 31, 51, 30, 36, 40, an ethical 60-piece, 32, 33, 43, 41, and 42, which if you do some addition comes to 600, and division puts that at 37.5. And then he was somehow 4th place in MVP voting. Man, this is absolutely, oh my god. Then we got walked by OKC, and in the process lost Luke and Reeves indefinitely, just before the 4th straight postseason appearance. The ceiling of a team led by 41-year-old LeBron James is a second-round sweep. Is there a little bit of bias on that? Take a look at what I'm wearing. Now, the floor for the Lakers is a first-round sweep. Coming off a 64-win season that ended in disappointment, the Cavs started okay. They were 19-6 at New Year's, but they had a lot of injuries, especially to Darius Garland, who they moved to LA at the trade deadline for James Harden. And they're 21-9 since the Beard's debut. This is their 4th consecutive playoff season and their 2nd straight 50-win year. Cleveland's floor is definitely second round, assuming Harden doesn't go playoff Harden on them, and their ceiling is an NBA Finals appearance. It will be tough though, but they can't beat Boston. Houston lost in 7 games in the first round despite having the 2 seed last season. On the day of Game 7 of the NBA Finals, they brought in Kevin Durant. They began the season with a thrilling opening night game against OKC that they lost in double overtime. They won 15 of their first 20 games, but at the deadline they started to fall apart. There was the infamous KD files. Forget what he said about former teammates, just the current ones. He said, "I'm going to turn the ball over with this team." He also said, when referring to Jabari Smith, he low-key, we're going to have to redact that part, to the point where he said he missed Ben Simmons because at least he'd pass him the ball, which is crazy. And he also said Şengün couldn't shoot or defend. But they did finish the season 11-3, good for the 5 seed, their 2nd straight 50-win season and playoff appearance. KD also gave him 26 points on 52% shooting and passed MJ on the all-time scoring list. The floor for this team is a first-round L. As a Lakers fan, I should back this take up, but I won't. I'm very delusional. And the ceiling is taking OKC to 7. Coming off a lottery season, the Raptors had no expectations for 2026, but they started out nice. They were 14-5 in their first 19 games, and they finished the year 46-36, their most wins in their first playoff season since their 48-win year in 2022. Scottie averaged 18-8 with 1.5 blocks per game. BI3 was great scoring-wise with 21.5 points per game. And I will say they dodged a bullet. Instead of playing a Knicks team that swept them 4-0, they got a Cavs team that they swept 3-0. Although that matchup has traditionally gone Cleveland's way in the playoffs. But I do think Toronto could actually beat the Cavs this time. That's their ceiling. The floor is getting waxed in 5 games. The Timberwolves came off their second straight conference finals, and after getting belted by the Thunder, a lot of people were wondering if they had hit their ceiling. To begin the season, they won 15 of their first 23 games and were 34-22 at All-Star break, right in the mix of the Western Conference playoffs. Late in the year, they were without Ann Edwards for 6 straight games, and as a result, he was ineligible for the awards, averaging 29 points per game. Oh my God, I cannot talk. I need a timeout. Minnesota won 49 games, got the 6th seed, and made the playoffs for the 5th straight year. Their ceiling is probably taking out Denver for the second time in 3 years and giving San Antonio a fight. But the floor is probably a 7-game thriller against the Nuggets. Coming off yet another mid-nothing burger of a season, the Atlanta Hawks' future looked very dark. They were much brighter without Trae Young, and they lost 7 in a row at one point to fall to 15-19. And then there was the whole Trae Young trade saga. Where's he going? And the answer was Washington for C.J. McCollum, Corey Kispert, and no picks. Atlanta went on to have an 11-game win streak and were 13-2 in the month of March. They got the 6th seed and drew a matchup with the Knicks in their first playoff season since 2023 and their first 46-plus-1 season since 2021. Jalen Johnson averaged an underrated 23, 10, and 8, and Nickeil Alexander had a really great career resurgence with the Hawks. Now, their floor is taking the Knicks to 7. And the ceiling is, drumroll please, you're not going to believe this, an NBA championship. That's it. That's right. I think the Hawks could legit be this year's Cinderella. Coming off another lottery season, the Portland Trail Blazers brought in Drew Holiday this offseason. Personally, I actually bought into them. I thought they could be a good team, but no one else did. And they did have a great start to the season. It was great. First, they lost the first game to Minnesota, although it was pretty close. And what happened the very next day? Their head coach gets arrested for alleged ties to the mafia. What do you mean ties to the? They started 9-16, but one of those wins was against the Oklahoma City Thunder. So for a while there, they were able to hold on to the fact that they were the only team to beat OKC. And they won 6 of the last 9 games this year to grab the 8th seed and were able to beat the Suns in the play-in for their first postseason appearance since 2021. Denny Advia averaged 24, 7, and 7 for the year, and he's going to have to keep them from their floor of getting swept. The ceiling is taking the Spurs to 5. I could see them getting a game at the Moda Center, most likely game 3. Coming off a season where Joel Embiid was either injured or hobbled for 19 games, the 76ers' future looked pretty dark. They made a great call on drafting VJ Edgecombe at 3, and they started the season out hot. They were 4-0, but then they cooled off a little. There was a stretch in January, however, where Joel was consistently healthy and just absolutely balling. But they'd still finish the season 45-37, but they did beat Orlando for the 7th seed. Tyrese Maxey averaged 28 points and 7 assists, along with 2 steals per game. And against Boston, without Embiid, their floor is getting swept. But they could also take it to 6 if he returns. Phoenix had a very disappointing season with the big three of KD, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker last year. Beal went to the Clippers. Durant was shipped to Houston for Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks. There's an argument that the Suns have won this trade. And they also brought in Cavs assistant Jordan Ott as their new head coach. They started the year pretty well. They're 19-14 after 33, and at one point had a better record than Houston. But then they fell off. They didn't have a single winning month the rest of the way and fell down to the 7th seed, where they played Portland in the play-in and lost, but they smashed the Warriors last night to get the 8th seed. Devin Booker, in his 11th year with the Suns, averaged 26 points and 6 assists per game. And this is the first one where, in my opinion, the floor and the ceiling are the exact same. 4-0. I think they're getting 4-0'd by OKC. The 2025 Magic were the worst statistical three-point shooting team since the 2016 Lakers, who won just 17 games in Kobe Bryant's last year. So to fix that, they brought in three-point shooter Desmond Bane. And their season was very up and down all the way through, primarily due to the injury bug. They finished 45-37 and lost to Philly in the first play-in game. And despite no one outside of Orlando, Florida rooting for them, they whacked the Hornets last night, unfortunately, with Paulo averaging 22 points and 8 boards in 72 minutes. The Magic are getting Detroit round one. The floor is a sweep, but they could make it a little interesting and get it to 6. But that's going to do it. That's my full NBA playoff preview. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.